Muscovies versus Mallard-derived ducks. So, if you're thinking about getting ducks, most people, especially in the U.S., are thinking about getting Mallard-derived breeds. That means all the breeds that you typically know are originally bred from wild mallards, and then those are hybridized between them, and then ultimately become new breeds. But there are actually an entirely different species of ducks that you might consider getting called Muscovies. Even so different genus, different species. And if you remember from science days, the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. However, these can actually cross. But bottom line is Muscovies are an entirely different species, and a lot of people that get ducks don't even consider the species as a possibility. So depending on where you live in the U.S., Muscovies may actually be a better bird for you to get, better fowl, than a Mallard-derived breed. So in this episode of Duck Keeper's Corner, we're going to introduce you to Muscovy ducks, and the scientific name for Muscovies is, make sure I don't butcher this, Cairina moschata. And the primary range of the native Muscovies is Central and South America. They sort of go up into northern North America into southern Texas, but generally not really a native species here in the U.S.
They're an introduced species. They are feral in Florida, California,
Yeah.
Texas, around there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just referring to the actual the original native range, I guess is the best way to put it. And our guest today is Hannah from raisingducks.com. And Hannah has currently 47 Muscovy ducks in her flock, in addition to chickens, Mallard-derived breeds,
About
Mallard
28 of those.
28.
28 Mallard-derived ducks, yes.
Oh, well, okay. And hybrids between Mallards and Muscovies also. So she has quite a bit of knowledge to draw on based on all the animals that she has, and she can do a really good comparison of Mallards versus Muscovies. So again, her website is raising-ducks.com, or is it, I guess, dash ducks, Hannah?
Yeah,
Dash.
racing-ducks.com.
And Hannah, like I said, she's got a ton of these animals, so she can really speak to the pros and cons and how they're different from mallards. So she's going to take us on a deep dive or maybe a dabble into the differences between these species and why you might want to consider getting Muscovies as your at least one of your birds, if not your primary or only species that you raise. So stay tuned as Hannah takes us through all things Muscovy duck. This is the Duck Keepers Corner video podcast, delivering honest duck talk for pet and backyard duck keepers. This podcast is produced by Aaron and Susan at Tyrant Farms. We're the authors of the Impractical Guide to Keeping Pet and Backyard Ducks, now available on Amazon. This episode of the Duck Keepers Corner features Hannah from raisingducks.com. When you type that domain, make sure to put a dash between the words raising and ducks. So my name is Aaron, and I am the managing partner at tyrantfarms.com, along with my wife, Susan, who is affectionately nicknamed the Tyrant. We raise ducks and have a book called The Impractical Guide to Keeping Ducks. This is our book, which is available on Amazon, hopefully soon to be Barnes& and Noble. And Hannah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Hannah. I live in Belize, which is makes my experience with ducks a little different. But and then I have, yeah, a small farmstead. We raise ducks, chickens, sheep. We have goats now, and we're trying to become more self-sufficient, basically.
Hmm. And on that note, are all these animals kind of mixed together as far as, I've seen pictures of your, fields and whatnot. How do you integrate all the different species together on a daily basis?
We have about 7 sheep pastures. The sheep rotate through those, and we have chickens in some of them. We have our retired ducks in our orchard. Then we have a separate chicken run that mainly just has chickens. So, and then there's some that are free range that kind of go wherever they want, which are
Yeah.
mainly the Muscovies because they can fly. They switch pastures if they want.
Yeah. And eventually they come back home.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feed them in the main area, so they all come back there.
Come back for food. Nice. Okay. And for those of us who don't, or for anyone listening who doesn't know what a Muscovy duck is, how would you describe a Muscovy?
Well, they're very large ducks, very strong. Their main defining feature is the caruncles. They're like warty mask around their face, similar to like a chicken's wattles or cum or
Mhm.
turkeys. And they are a separate species, similar to like a mandarin duck or wood duck, how those are a separate species, except they are domesticated, whereas most other species of ducks are not domesticated.
Mhm. Now, one thing you mentioned there that's pretty different from the Mallard-derived breeds. I don't think there's, other than wild mallards, I don't think there's any breed of Mallard-derived bird here in the U.S. that you can get that can still fly. So we don't have to clip wings. We don't have to do that.
Phantoms.
Bantams?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be true. Okay, bantams. Uh, Now, with Muscovies, when you say they can fly, I mean, I assume you mean they can literally like kind of, I don't know, get to the top of a tree, for instance. I mean,
Oh, yes, yes.
how flighted are they?
Well, I don't think they are good for long distance flight, but they can get up in the air. They
Mm,
fly on top of our roof sometimes. I actually do clip their wings most of the time, but so they don't fly away, but they can.
okay.
Uh,
So what would keep them, let's say, because our birds, I assume if they were fully flighted, because they're very curious and they want to always go into our whatever, we let them out at night into our gardens. They always, especially when it's raining and they get really into whatever they can, hunt and find, slugs and snails, they want to take off. So I had to kind of use a herding stick to keep them on our property. What keeps a flighted bird from, saying, well, I'm gonna head to the river, a couple miles away and be a wild duck?
well, they stick around. They can fly. I'm afraid they will fly away if I like left them unclipped the whole time. So I do usually clip their wings, but after they molt, they have a few weeks of flying around. They will sometimes like circle around our property and then come back. They don't leave. I
Okay.
guess because they know there's food here. They have lots of space. It's 8 acres, so they have the
Yeah.
space to run around.
So would it be similar to like a cat or a dog, where you let it out, then it's eventually going to come back when it gets hungry or at night or whatever happens to be?
Yeah, they don't go far at all. I'd say even within our 8 acres, they don't use most of it. They stay very close.
Interesting. Okay. Uh, I wish I could say the same about our Mallard-derived, but I'm not sure they would be so good about staying home. And tell us, I guess, why your story. Why and when did you decide to get Muscovies? What was the impetus for that?
My dad got some when I was a kid to start with because he was interested in the idea of raising eggs. And then I
Mhm.
only had him for a year and a half. Then we moved to Belize. And then in 2014, I got Muscovies because it was the only kind I could find. I couldn't find Mallard-derived ducks anywhere at the time. So yeah, it was my only choice at then.
Got it. And here in the U.S., there's farm stores you can get little ducklings at beginning of the year, which we kind of discourage because a lot of people impulse buy those. There's breeders you can get them from. Basically there's any number of ways you can get ducks. And for us, a big one is rescues. But so in other areas of the world, I guess for U.S. listeners or that might be curious, how do you go about getting ducks in Belize? Are there markets? Are there other farms you go to? What's the process?
Yeah, mainly it's just you contacts, like word of mouth. I know of various farmers or breeders or poultry enthusiasts that have flocks of right now we have like Saxony buff, Khaki Campbell breeders, basically.
Hmm. And would you say that Muscovies are sort of the default species down
Yeah,
there for waterfowl?
yes, they are. Definitely.
Would
Especially
that,
because they live wild here.
yeah.
I actually see wild ducks quite often.
Okay. Would you say they perform better in your climate than your mallards, or any differences that you can kind of note from your experiences in raising both?
Uh the Muscovies are definitely very hardy, but the Mallard-derived ducks, they are doing fine. They lay way more than the Muscovies. So I don't know.
Yeah. And we're kind of jumping into the differences between the two species. So maybe we can kind of, we mentioned obviously Muscovies are flighted, mallards are not. Egg production is a big one. So a lot of people in the US obviously or elsewhere in the world get ducks for egg production. So maybe
Yeah,
let's just
so
kind of take a little deeper dive into some of these differences between the species.
okay, yes, egg production would be the biggest disadvantage of Muscovies. They do not lay much. They lay about 60 to 120 eggs a year.
Hmm.
Mine are on the low end, definitely. I don't know why, but yeah, they are not productive layers. If you have them for pets, they'll make enough for a family if you have a few. But yeah,
And I wonder if some of that might be the management practices where they're getting a lot of exercise or free foraging. So they're not, kind of sitting around in a cage, just, getting tons of nutrients and having like a ton of excess kind of, bodily energy and body fat and whatnot that maybe might be more typical with a US bird because,
uh,
or if it's some, or the heat. I guess I wonder what factors would contribute to a lower egg production down there. And for us,
well, no, because my Saxony ducks and Cocky Campbells, they lay every day.
they
So
do.
it's the genetics.
Okay.
And also, I think the Muscovies, even in the US, I don't think you can find Muscovies that lay a lot. They
Yeah.
just, I think people haven't focused on breeding them for high egg production is the thing.
They're primarily
But
raised for kind of a multifunctional, but maybe primarily a meat bird. Would you say is that accurate? I know that's one of, the males
probably.
especially size up really quickly and are large and supposedly quite delicious for people who eat ducks. Um, so is that the primary function
I
uh,
would say, yeah, at
for
least
duckification?
commercially. But
Yeah.
they're common as just farm birds, backyard birds as well.
Okay. And then maybe let's dive into some of the other differences because, talking before this episode, you mentioned things like roosting, which obviously is unique for, when you think ducks, ours at night in their coop, they're on the floor. So I guess maybe let's go through some of these other differences that might be of interest to people who would consider them or are interested in
Yeah,
looking.
starting with roosting. They don't roost like chickens, like they don't go to the same coop every night and go fly up on a roost. You can train them to, but they're happy to sleep on the floor. But if you give them a roost, they will maybe use it. Like I have a roost in my duck's night coop, and maybe four ducks will use it at night, and then some will sit on like a concrete block on the floor, and the rest will sit on the ground. So
Okay. This might
they
be a
don't
weird
need it.
question, but with the females, let's say they're roosting at night and then, it's time to lay eggs. Will they get down on the floor or will they just kind of drop the egg off the roost and splat on the floor? Or how does that work?
No, they are very. The other big thing about Muscovies is their favorite thing to do is make babies. So they are very good at hiding their nests. They make very carefully chosen, carefully constructed nests.
Okay. And they try to hide them from you like outside the coop, like they'll kind of
Definitely. They
hold their
almost
eggs.
never lay in the coop.
Oh wow. Okay. That might be an important thing for people to consider because a lot of people might not want a whole other clutch of babies to deal with. Now, will they lay with our girls? They typically in their coop will have a communal nest. We might have one occasionally that'll hold the egg and sneak out and put it over somewhere in the bushes. But do
Yeah,
Muscovy
my
do a communal nest?
occasionally, yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes they will choose their own nest. Sometimes that I'll have like two or three laying in the same nest.
Hmm.
But mostly they will just find a hidden location if they can.
Yeah. And one of the things in an article about we wrote about hatching duck eggs, we have experience hatching mallards, but not muscovies. One of the things I thought was interesting in just looking into muscovies was that they do take a little bit longer, their eggs to hatch. So
Yeah, I don't know
with
why.
the
It's
mallard,
interesting because turkeys take 28 days, geese take 28 days, Mallard-derived ducks take 28 days, chickens are 21, and then Muscovies are 35.
yeah. So who knows why that is? Maybe something magical's happening with that extra week they have inside the egg. Yeah, you mentioned that they are a smarter bird in your experience
Yes.
than mallards. Not that, I mean, we have some pretty smart little ducks, but they do tend to be humorously. I don't want to insult our flock by calling them stupid, but that they're not the brightest animals on the farm, so to speak. So, what do you, tell us a little bit about muscovies as far as their intelligence and how that might be different from a mallard.
I say they're closer to geese as far as intelligence. Have you had geese?
I've been around a lot of geese. We've goose sat for friends. And we also
Ah, okay.
have a really good friend who raises geese that we wrote a book with.
Yeah, so I started with Muscovies, so I was used to how their personalities, their general level of intelligence. Then we got the Mallard-derived ducks, and my sister and I joke that they share one collective brain cell.
Ooh,
But I mean, they're not that much. They're similar, but
yeah. Now, are they equally as entertaining? Because maybe part of the entertainment value of our ducks, our mallard ducks, but derived ducks, is that maybe lack of the extra brain cell that you mentioned.
yeah,
Is
I would
that
say the Mallard-derived ducks are a little more entertaining. I don't, they're funny, yes.
yeah?
The
In
Muscovies are more
person?
calm and quiet and laid back.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a big one, right? For people that aren't so fortunate to have a farm like yourself, let's say you're living in a neighborhood and you're trying to figure out, which species to get. Girl mallards can be mallard-derived ducks can be quite noisy. Our drake, not so much. Just like a kind of a raspy little blurp blurp sound.
Hmm.
How noisy and what's the difference between the from a male Muscovy versus female Muscovy, and then generally Muscovies versus Mallards.
The male Muscovies, they're both very quiet, both males and females are. You will
Mm,
not hear them unless you're quite close to them, or neighbors will not hear them.
okay.
Males will like hiss, it's not like a goose hiss, it's like a very soft, raspy horse hiss.
Hmm.
And then females have this like trilling sound. They can honk or quack occasionally, but only when they're like in distress or something like that. But it's mostly just like this, people call it like a musical trill.
Hmm.
So it's a very pleasant sound, not annoying at all.
All right.
And
So here's
then
what we're gonna have to. We'll definitely insert. You mentioned sharing some vocalizations. So this is the part where we'll add a snippet so people can hear these vocalizations. Good. Here are male Muscovy vocalizations. And now comes female Muscovy vocalizations. the sounds. We have some we have a pond near us that people for whatever this happens all over the U.S. It's really frustrating. People get ducks and then they end up dumping it, whatever the local pond is. Once they figure out that they just don't have the desire or ability to raise ducks, so they end up dumping them out in the wild. I guess maybe that happens down in Belize as well. But at this pond, which is actually Furman University pond, there's wild or not, excuse me, not wild. There are formerly
Feral.
feral, yeah, ducks that have been dumped. There are Muscovies over there. There's tons of different kind of mallards. The Muscovies, the Mallards seem to be a little more timid and a little more skittish around people, and the Muscovies will just like come right up and to anybody it seems like, which is maybe not the best characteristic because there's all kinds of people over there, little kids that might want to whatever hit them with a stick or who knows what. Um,
Mm.
but bottom line is, I guess on the temperament side of things, are Muscovies generally more timid or friendly around humans as far as your experience goes?
I'm not sure how to answer that because I wouldn't say mine are friendlier than the Mallard-derived ones. I don't know
Mhm.
why. Uh, I guess they do let me pet them more.
Mhm.
The Mallard-derived ducks, they'll run around, they'll follow me, they'll come up close, beg for food, but they don't like being petted or held, whereas the Muscovies, I think, tolerate it a bit better. So,
Yeah. And these are all birds you've raised from day one, correct? As far as all the different, the 47 Muscovies, for instance, you have in your flock. Are these animals that you got as adults, or are these animals that you hatched or bought as eggs, or what was the process?
mostly I've just hatched them because they love to hatch and we have like a few ducklings a year usually.
Mm-hmm.
The Mallard-derived ducks, I've got most of those as adults
Hmm.
because, yeah.
And will Mama Duck kind of be protecting? I know with geese, for instance, they're very protective. They kind of, the geese, the males and the females will protect the goslings. Is it something similar with the Muscovy ducklings?
No, not really. They will like attack. I've had one of my ducks attack a dog, but with me, they're fine. They'll hiss. They will bite, but they're probably just because they're used to me.
Yeah,
They're not very aggressive, I don't think.
got it. And with our mallards, we have a young our son's 5 years old now, but we taught him how to handle ducks, but he has occasionally over the years had a duck nip him, and it's more funny. It doesn't hurt, right? It's just like this little bill. It's not like a chicken where it can peck you and actually do some damage, but
I would say Muscovies can bite worse than chickens or Mallard-derived ducks. They can grab a piece of skin and twist and
ooh, okay.
hold on.
I assume
So
they
they
have
are not,
the melee like ducks do, sort of the false teeth, almost like the kind of the filtering
yeah.
mechanism. Okay.
But I would say they're not the greatest. If someone has children, I don't think they're the best pet because they are very strong, can be hard to handle, especially the males, and then very sharp claws, and then yes, they can bite.
Yeah. So on that note, kind of sexual dimorphism, the males Muscovies are much larger than females. Is that generally correct?
Yes, they are about twice the size.
Mm.
Males are 9 to 15 pounds. Females are like 5.5 to 7 pounds. So the females are closer to like a regular duck size. Actually, my Mallard-derived ducks are bigger than my female Muscovies.
Hmm.
So the females aren't that big, but they are very strong. They
Yeah.
have huge, powerful wings.
Okay. So maybe like the size, we have a jumbo Peking. It's one of the breeds we have, and Piper, she's absolutely massive bird. She almost looks like a goose to most people. People can't believe she's a duck. And she's actually in good shape. They tend to be prone to obesity and whatnot, but she's a healthy duck, but she's still a giant bird. So it sounds like it might be somewhere in that range. But even the males Muscovy sound like they'd be much larger than even the
Well,
larger.
I have two pecans. My female Muscovies are smaller than them. They are closer to the size of my Khaki camels, actually. They're
Okay.
not that big. The males, though, the males are bigger than pretty much any Mallard-derived duck.
Hmm.
They are huge.
Um, Okay, so let's talk about the relationship to water. So with our Mallard-derived ducks, we have a pond for them, and they're probably swimming out there, 6, 10 times a day, especially in the summer. Frolicking, cleaning, doing all the things the ducks do, mating. What's do you need to have, a pond, a small pond of some sort for a muscovy, or can they get by with less water? What's their general relationship with water?
They definitely should have somewhere to have a bath, but they don't need it as much. They won't be in it as often. And yeah, my Mallard-derived ducks, when I let them out in the morning, they go flying to the pond and spend hours there. And the Muscovies, I think when I let them out, they usually run to their nest or to their favorite shady spots. And then they will have a bath, maybe once a day. Sometimes not even that. Sometimes like once a week or something. I don't know. But
Hmm.
they do appreciate it. They do need still, they need water deep enough to rinse their whole face in at least.
Yeah. Now, when you see them in the wild down there, where do you the feral ones, or even the wild? I don't know if you can tell the difference between a feral Muscovy
Oh yes.
versus an actual wild one. Where
The
do you typically see them? Are you seeing them in waterways, or are you seeing them just walking around in parks, or what's the environment that they tend?
well, first, they do look very different. The wild ones are solid black with an
Mhm.
iridescent sheen with like a very prominent white mark on their wing. So that's the only color they come in. Feral Muscovies will be any color. There's a lot of colors and varieties.
Now,
And then okay,
is that true of males and females? Both have the same similar coloration with the wild?
yes, they are the same color. There is no difference between the colors of male and female Muscovies.
Hmm. They have a Drake curl or no
No, they
Drake?
don't.
No
No
Drake
direct
curl.
curl,
Okay.
but the males are way bigger, and there's a few other ways to tell them apart. Different boys.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
But anyway, where I see them is mainly they just fly to our farm and visit our ducks. And
Okay.
then I'll see them swimming in the pond or walking around occasionally. Or
They
flying
ever
overhead.
they ever decide to stay put, or they eventually take off again?
Yeah, we had one male that hung around for a few months. I haven't seen him in a while now, but he hung around for months. And then we also had a female who nested in our one of our sheep pastures, and then she had ducklings in the pond. And then they
Wow.
all flew away.
Oh well. Well, sounds like a good place to be a duck. I can understand the draw. And then so let's talk about their food needs. Is that also similar to a mallard-derived bird as far as everything from niacin to protein ratios and whatnot as they get older and start laying? What do you see there?
To my knowledge, it's the same, but that could be there hasn't been much research done on them.
Hmm.
I have never heard of Muscovies having niacin issues, so it's
Okay.
it's possible, but I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. And do you give them all the same feed as far as because you have a kind of a complicated situation there where you actually have all these different breeds. I'm sorry, different species. You have geese, you have chickens, you have Muscovies and Mallards. Are they all kind of eating from the same feed sources?
Yes, pretty much we just basically feed them all layer feed, chicken layer feed, except the ducklings will usually get chick feed with
Hmm.
niacin added.
And
But I
they have.
haven't added it.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I haven't added it for the Muscovies because I have never had an issue, and it just doesn't seem necessary right now as long as they're free ranging at least.
Hmm. So even the males are getting layer feed. Is that right?
Hmm.
Okay. And that you provide access to that 24 hours a day? Or is it one of those things where you'd use that for them to come in at night to the where you want them? Is that
Usually twice a day. I'll go out at noon and pick eggs. I'll feed all the birds then. Not always. Yeah, I usually put some food out then, and then they have their main meal in the evening to get them in
Mhm.
uh, for the night.
And we talked a little bit about the difference in egg production, but what is a Muscovy duck egg like versus a mallard egg as far as size and taste and other kind of key features?
It's a little bit smaller than my Mallard-derived duck's eggs, just slightly, and it's got a slightly like waxier, creamier shell. So
Hmm.
sometimes I can tell the difference, sometimes I can't.
Hmm.
They're very similar otherwise. Taste-wise, I think the same, but someone might be able to tell the difference. I can't.
Okay. And they have the same sort of, with if you compare a duck egg versus a chicken egg, obviously typically a duck egg is going to be much larger. The yolk's going to be larger. Is the Muscovy egg also have a larger yolk?
Hmm. Yes. But I'd say size, the whole egg is it's between a large chicken egg and a Mallard-derived duck egg, I think.
Hmm.
But that could
Uh,
just be mine because I've heard of people having huge Muscovy eggs as well.
okay. And I'm gonna bring up a topic that some people necessarily won't like, but that's okay. That happens. So some people eat meat. We also eat meat. We're very discerning about where we get our meat from, as far as making sure it's ethically raised and kind of meets a wide range of criteria. Uh, do you primarily raise your muscovies for meat production, or is it egg, or is it sort of a multifunctional aspect to it?
Uh, we start with just raising them for eggs. Now, whenever they have ducklings, we will process the males, yes, because I am trying to raise um more or most of our own meat, but I'm mostly focusing on chicken. The ducks just if we have some males to process, I will.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask two questions here because no, that reminds me of. So would you describe the meat as far as the quality of it goes? Compared to maybe just standard Mallard-derived meat, which might typically be a Peking or silver apple yard or larger breeds like that that are
It's
used
a
for meat.
very dark meat. I've
Mhm.
heard people say it's really good, it's even comparable to steak. It's not my favorite though. It's
Mhm.
For me, it's mostly been quite tough. Uh, it tastes good though. It's flavorful.
Yeah. I imagine yours are also different from a typical farm raised where they're just like, sitting inside a yours is more like kind of a, whatever pasture fed or grass fed, grass finished beef sort of situation where people who are
Oh
used to eating these
yes.
sort of fatty steaks or they don't like it, but once you kind of are acclimated to that, then you actually don't like the kind of the fattier farm type meat that you get. So I wonder if your situation where they're flying around, they're foraging, if you end up with actually a much healthier meat, but one in which might be, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure it's healthier. It's probably tougher, very lean. I'm sure if you process them younger, it would be more tender
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now, one reason I would assume, and this also kind of gets to another qu set of questions, with Mallard-derived, if you have a ratio of, let's say, one, if you have one Drake, the most, ideal ratio would be like a 4-to-1, maybe 3-to-1, kind of pushing it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with overmated birds or stress birds, unless you're able to separate them out in different pens and coops and whatnot. With Muscovies, I assume there might be a similar situation there, and which also would explain the need if you're hatching duck eggs for Muscovies, you're going to end up with 50% female, 50% male over the long term. So you can't possibly have that many
yeah,
males.
that's one challenge with raising Muscovies. If someone doesn't, it just wants them as pets. If they don't want to use the males for meat or anything, the
Mhm.
males are very, very hard to rehome. But
Ev- Yeah, so would they be, I guess for, it makes sense if you're producing your own meat, but I guess for a homeowner, that might be something
yeah,
here in
for
the,
me, it's not a problem.
yeah.
Uh, okay, on the ratio, you were asking about the ratio. Yes, it's about the same ratio, I'd say. I I've always kept a very good ratio because we don't keep very many males, so I haven't seen exactly how much we can push it with the males. With the Mallard-derived ducks, we do have like a 1-to-3 ratio right now, I think, and that's definitely starting to push it. So,
Mhm.
but I
Do you
haven't experimented with the Muscovies.
Yeah. Do you try to like with us here in where we are, we're South Carolina, USA. So about I'd say like 4 to 5 months of the year, primarily in kind of winter, our Drake his hormones switch and he calms down. We've had a lot of Drakes over the years, same story. And he could be fully out with our flock during the day and behaves himself and doesn't cause stress and chase their females around. Do you see something like that? Might be different there on the equator. I don't know how the light levels and whatnot affect things. Do your drakes ever calm down for part of the year,
I
or are they
I
always
think my Muscovy drakes are calm all the year, actually.
okay?
Maybe it's because I have a lot of them. A lot of females, only two males right now, actually. Used to have
Mhm.
more. They are very calm, I'd say. I don't see
Mhm.
them running around chasing females very much at all
Yeah,
compared to the Mallard-derived ducks.
got it. One thing you said that was funny too, before our actual talk here, is that you actually had names for all 47 of your Muscovy ducks, which is amazing because that number one, that's a lot of names to remember and come up with. Uh, but you said you don't necessarily have a name for every one of your mallards just because it sounds like your
I do
musky.
actually,
You do? Okay, never mind.
pretty much. There's
Okay.
the babies I haven't named yet, but
All right.
if I get very many more, I will definitely lose track.
Do you
Because they,
recycle names? I mean, because I'm trying to think. I don't even know if I could come up with. I have to use like a online directory or something to kind of come up with that many names, and then I mean, you can look at your Muscovy and you can say like that one is I don't know Harold or whatever it is.
yeah,
Wow. Okay, that's impressive. Because I actually get some of our birds mixed up. I'm embarrassed. We have a flock. I think we have 10 right now. We have two like I think they're hybrid white layers. We got them from a rescue. I can't tell them apart. My wife can like from the speckling on their beak, but I just call them the
I have
twins.
a couple Cocky Campbells, Biscuit and Gravy. I can barely tell them apart. And then a
Okay.
few Saxons also. They kind of have slightly interchangeable names, maybe, but I'm not. They do have names, but I'm not. Sometimes I'm not sure which one's which. But the
Yeah.
Muscovies, yeah, that's a nice advantage of them is you can tell them all apart very easily. They have like almost unlimited different patterns and colors, and then they have the caruncles on their face are unique, so you can learn to remember their faces, I think, quite easily.
Yeah. Yeah, the caruncles, number one, that's such a great word, caruncles. I think there's something about that word I find really entertaining. But they are a really interesting feature. And one of the things, being in Belize, you would not have experience with this. One of the things we hear up here in the northern hemisphere is that those caruncles can actually be sort of a detriment in certain situations when it gets really cold. They're prone to frostbite. So, something to maybe talk about a little bit is who is a Muscovy duck good for? And, based on potentially location is one of the primary criteria. And then maybe who is it not so good for? So imagine like, I don't know if you have reference to this. Let's say Maine, United States, kind of a northern cold
Actually,
climate.
the biggest Muscovy breeder I know of right now is in Maine.
Oh, well, I take that back. Okay. So are they keeping them outdoors all year round or do
I
you
don't know how they do it. I've seen pictures. They have like every color imaginable. I think they ship them even. It's
okay.
Owl's Quackery. You can look it up if you want.
Owl, like AL?
Yes.
Owls. Okay, cool.
At
Owls.
least I think that's the one that's in Maine.
Okay. Let's check that out. We'll add a link in the show notes to make sure that's correct. But okay, so it sounds like pretty much most climates they can do pretty well in.
Yeah, I would say they are more suited to a warmer climate. But like chickens, you can keep them anywhere. You just need to take care to make sure they are not they need like deep bedding and then a I think it's humidity is what causes the frostbite, isn't it?
Humidity, well, yeah, probably a combination of humidity and just obviously just pure cold exposure. If it's like, 5 degrees or 0 degrees outside Fahrenheit, and you have sort of this uncovered, soft tissue exposure, then
Hmm.
it's going to be prone to issues. But maybe the housing, depending on where you live, might be something to consider during the winter. Maybe not letting them out or on certain days or whatnot.
Yeah, in general, ducks don't need a lot of winter protection, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, our ducks, the colder and wetter, the better. Like if it's 5 degrees and snow on the ground, our ducks are just thrilled. They might kind of sit on their feet every now and then to kind of warm them up, but for the most
yeah,
part,
but
they.
Muscovies they would definitely need a draft-free protected area.
Mhm. And we're kind of getting into a little bit of the question of health. So what differences, if any, do you see? A big problem people have up here is reproductive health issues. Do you see any differences in overall health or sort of robustness, maybe is a better term to put, between your Muscovies and your Mallards derived?
I haven't had the Mallard-derived ones very long. I haven't really had issues with them either. But I would say the Muscovies, I've had this flock for 11 years, total 12 years. Never had a single health issue except one duck had like her eye swell up and her eye was like swollen shut. She's half blind now.
Hmm.
But that's not a very productive issue or anything like that. That was, I think, a freak accident.
Yeah. And are your longevity and also egg production. So let's talk a little bit about how long, in your experience, the Muscovies live. We have in our flock, we have, I think our oldest female is 10, maybe a little older than that now. We have actually a few 10-year-olds, and one of them is still producing eggs every now and then. One of them produce actually pretty regularly during the kind of peak production season. One of them produces every now and then one of them has we call it henopause, is basically past that stage in life and is now basically in retirement,
Yeah,
happily. But the lifespan of the longest I've heard of a mallard living is maybe a little around maybe a little north of 20 years for drakes. Not sure about Muscovies, but the bottom line is on egg production, Mallards derived in there's some variance by breed and whatnot, but egg production I'd say probably peaks 3, 4 years old, and then maybe 7 to 9 years might be where you could expect them to begin shutting off production. And then, like I said,
I think
maybe.
Muscovies are very similar. I'd say mine lay until 9 or 10 years. My oldest one is 13 years old,
Mhm.
and she's definitely not laying. I think my 10-year-old ducks, they maybe lay like one clutch, a few eggs a year. That's
Mhm.
about it. And then full lifespan, as far as I have never heard of a 20-year-old Muscovy, so I'm guessing it's going to be a similar lifespan.
Mhm. Now, your 13-year-old Muscovy, is she still, getting around fine? Is she walking and flapping and
Yeah, she
living
looks
her best
about the
life?
same as the others. I can't tell she's old at all.
That's neat. Okay. Um, So we talked about who Muscovies are not good for. And I'm gonna ask you a question that might be kind of hard for you to answer. What if you could only pick one species of the birds you have? Which one would you go with, or maybe even rank them for us as far as like from favorite to least favorite? And this is highly subjective, obviously.
Uh, well, there is a part of me that really loves the Muscovies because they're very unique, very lovable, and easy, like I said, easy to identify individuals, very individual. But I think I would pick Mallard-derived ducks still because I think they're easier to work with in the garden because they don't try to jump over the fence or anything. They don't. Uh, I can keep them in the garden easily and keep them
Hmm.
contained, and they lay way more. So I would still say I think they fit our farm better. The
Yeah.
only exception is the Muscovies. They're very good foragers, very independent. If I needed a very independent duck, then I think Muscovies, I would stick with them.
Hmm. And do you have, out of curiosity, being in a farm setting, do you have runners in your list of breeds of mallard?
I'm looking for them. I haven't found them yet, but
Okay.
I would love to have some.
Yeah, because those are in the U.S. at least those are typically the ones if you have a farm and you want really good foragers that are fast and can potentially avoid predators. Those are really good breed to choose. We have one blue runner, and he is so fast. He actually frustrates our son's ridiculously fast, and he's like the only duck that he has trouble catching. But also a good forager. So I didn't know how they would compare on the foraging front in a kind of a farm type context or small farm context.
They are definitely considered good foragers. I don't know if they would be better than runners or
Hmm.
my other Mallard-derived ducks or not. I think they are. They're very independent, though. I think they would have an easier time finding all their own food.
Yeah. Uh, and here's maybe this is a myth you can bust or not. One thing I hear up here is that people who have mosquito problems, Muscovies apparently just love snapping mosquitoes out of the air and keeping mosquito populations down. Have you any thoughts on that claim?
I've heard that too. I've also heard people saying they'll snap flies out of the air. I don't think I've seen mine do that, but they do eat mosquito larvae. They love eating larvae out of our tubs and pools. The Mallard-derived ducks will do that too, though.
Hmm. But they generally, if they're in the air, you're not seeing them snapping them up like a
Not that I
bug.
know of. Maybe I haven't watched enough, but
Okay. Yeah. So I wonder if that's true or not. Maybe that happens when you're up here in the US. Um, Okay, so another interesting bird that you have, which you've essentially created, which is also very popular for certain situations, is mule or mular ducks or hinnies. So can you describe what those are and then what maybe the features of those birds are?
I do have a pair. I'm not that familiar with the exact differences between them. Let me check the notes. Yes, so if you cross a Muscovy and a Mallard-derived duck, you will get a mule or a hinny, and they are infertile. Hinnies will lay eggs, but they won't hatch. Mules will not lay eggs at all, but they're often used for like meat because they're very fast growing.
Okay.
Um, then
So
yes, a
to make sure I understand, a mule, there's mule and hinny, and a mule is a cross between which is the
Muscovy
male?
drake, a
Muscovy
Muscovy
drake. Okay.
drake, and a Mallard-derived hen, and
Okay.
hinnies are the opposite.
Okay. But for all intents and purposes, that they look the same. As far as is there any differences between them?
I only have mules, well, like
Okay.
a pair of mules.
They're hard
I
to say.
think hinnies are smaller, so they're not. People don't do that cross deliberately because that's not good for meat. And I don't know about the egg laying. I'm guessing they don't lay very many eggs.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
think the primary. I'm sorry, go ahead.
the sounds might be different. I have never had a hinny. I don't know what they sound like, but I think
Yeah.
I've heard they have slightly different sounds.
Hmm.
My mules, they make kind of like Muscovy noises, but then they can also quack. The female can quack kind of. And then the
Interesting.
male, he hisses, but it's not quite the same as a Muscovy drake hiss. It's a
Yeah.
kind of a weird hybrid sound.
It's not quite sure what it is.
Yeah.
My understanding is the primary reason for raising those are primarily used for like, meat production. Is that correct? I mean, if they're not fertile, then they're not going to be laying eggs. So is that?
Yeah, I'd say that's the only pe reason people would deliberately cross them is for meat.
Mhm.
And then it's called a Mullard. I think that would be a Muscovy Pekin cross,
Okay.
but people call that a Mullard. I don't know how that would be pronounced though.
Yeah. Um, and was that an intentional kind of cross on your part, or it just sort of happen? Did nature just sort of take its course on your farm there?
Actually, it was when I was looking for Mallard-derived ducks. Someone said they had some that were not Muscovies, so I went to check them out, and I realized they were mules when I got to the farm, but I just got them anyway.
Huh. Okay. Um, Now, one thing I should say for people who are living in the United States is that there might, the first thing before you potentially go out and get any duck, whether that's a muscovy or any animal for that matter, is whether it's legal or not. So there are in some areas apparently some federal regulations that would apply to muscovies, being considered an invasive species, even as far as availability or legality. And then there's also, various state ordinances, various city ordinances, or even all the way down to the level of a homeowners association. So one thing I just want to make sure that we're really clear about, from a responsible ownership standpoint, as that people check that out before they ever go get any of these birds. Because what you don't want to do is go out and get birds and then find out you can't have them for whatever legal reason, and then be in a situation where you have to rehome them and can't find a home, and then that increases the likelihood of someone dumping them in a pond, which is not good for anyone or anything. So I just want to make sure we state that very clearly. Don't get birds until you know you can legally, and you're also fully prepared to do so as far as predator proofing, coop and run, whatever it happens to be. So anyway, want to make sure we say
I've
that.
heard of I've heard quite a few people finding like feral Muscovy ducklings and adopting them. I don't know if that's legal, but there
Yeah.
are in Florida they are overrun with feral Muscovies.
Yeah. On that note, are there specific places that you recommend people get Muscovies? I know it might be kind of hard to say from Belize, but we talked about rescues, for instance. I would imagine that rescues might be a great place as they
Definitely,
first come.
because they have a very hard time rehoming them.
Hmm.
So if someone wants to get a flock of Muscovy drakes from a rescue, that would be a great idea if someone wants to do that. And then, especially like Florida, I'm sure they have a lot of rescue ducks there.
Hmm.
The next option would be a breeder. There are good breeders. Like I said, I know there's the one in Maine. I know one in Washington, one in Arizona. I don't know where all, but actual Muscovy breeder is overall would be the a good place to get them. And then
Hmm.
hatcheries, Metzer Farms has white Muscovies and black Muscovies. I don't know if they ship them everywhere. Because Muscovy most hatcheries don't have Muscovies because they're hard to ship. They
Hmm.
apparently don't tolerate it as well.
Hmm. So they have a higher mortality rate as ducklings being shipped in the mail, sounds like.
I think so, yes. Uh Metzer Farms does have them, like I said though, but only two colors.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, they're the kind of the big breeder here in the U.S. And we'll provide links to those also, so on the show notes. Um, so anything else, Hannah, that you want to let people know about Muscovies or any
Yeah, I
other?
was gonna say, speaking of the colors, they
Yeah.
have so many colors. I think probably more than I know runners come in a lot of colors, calls do.
Hmm.
And with Mallard-derived ducks, it's mostly like each breed has its own color. Like magpies are one, Welsh Harlequins have their own pattern or color. And then Muscovies I have a list of the colors.
And they're not actually considered breeds, right? And Muscovies, they're
It's just one species. There are no breeds of
yeah.
Muscovies.
So it's just basically yeah, everyone's kind of a unique.
And then you can if you cross them, you'll get different colors. I have black, blue, and silver. And then I have them in like barred, plain colors, pied, and then also there's this white head gene that's dominant that causes them to have a completely white head.
Hmm.
But there's also like lavender. Let me look at my list. Lavender, lilac, buff, bronze, blue, cream, and several other like rare colors. And those patterns also includes ripple and loony.
Wow. Now these are specific traits that you're looking for in the offspring, or are you trying to breed for any particular one of these, or just kind of making notes and showing an interest in how the genes happen to
It's just
express?
an interesting part of the breed is that you can get them in a really large variety. I like the silvers best personally,
Hmm.
but yeah.
What would the silver look like? Is that, and we'll also hopefully maybe put up a picture once you are done describing it. But what would you say a silver? And also, am I pronouncing it correct? I'm saying Muscovy, and I think you're saying Muscovy. Is that? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. Is that kind of a maybe I should
I'm
have
not
asked that.
100% sure, but people often call them scobies. So I'm
Muscovy?
guessing
Okay.
I often mispronounce things myself, but I do hear people say scobies a lot
Okay.
for
Maybe
short.
I can just call Scovy to make sure I'm not mispronouncing. I think I can get the pronunciation on that. Okay. So is there any, we mentioned the colors, the last thing there. Anything, any other aspects of interest with Muscovies that people might want to consider, or you find interesting?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention they are not as flock based. Like with the Mallard-derived ducks, if you herd them, they will like clump into a ball, and if they're scared, they will pack together and saying the ducks in a row, you'll have your Mallard-derived ducks in a row most of the time.
Hmm.
If they're walking somewhere, they'll walk in a row. Whereas Muscovies they will go off on their own. Like I often have like sisters sticking together, but other than that, they spread around. They will go forage on their own. They will go have a bath in the pond on their own. They're not as block based. Although you should definitely still get two. You shouldn't have a single Muscovy.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Um, I should also mention this. I don't know how people don't know this yet because I don't know how you get your ducks to go, not you, but just the broad you, get your ducks to go where you want them without. So we use like these long herding sticks. You can just take a piece of like thin piece of bamboo. We
Yeah,
don't
we do
hit them
that
with it,
too.
but you basically just, you kind of, if you want them to go that way, you put the stick over here. If you want them to go that way, you put the stick over here. So they're basically, with their little eyes on the side of their head, kind of turning back and looking at you, and then they kind of move forward and go in the direction you want. If we don't use herding sticks, like we can't get our ducks to, they're going to do whatever they want to. If I'm just out there like waving my arms around, they just look at me like I'm an idiot. Do Muscovies or Scovies, how do you herd? Do you use a whistle? Do you use a herding stick or what?
I used to use a herding stick, yes.
Okay.
Um, Now they go to bed on their own, so I just stick food in there, they all come. Same with
Okay.
the Mallard-derived ducks. I used to herd them to bed. They are harder to herd in a way because I don't know why, they always miss the door. It seems like they always go past the door and run around.
Yeah.
Um, with their one shared brain cell, one misses that they all do. Uh, but now they're also trained to go to bed, so I don't really have to herd them anymore.
So what do you do? You have 7 acres, which is pretty big as far as are you ringing a bell or do they just know like now it's time for food? How do they know that it's food time and start coming in?
Usually I just go out. Nowadays, I'll go out like near sunset and they're all already in.
Okay.
They're very well behaved now.
Huh.
But before that, I would just put the food in there and they would all follow me in.
Yeah. And ours, one thing with the mallards is ours love a routine. If we're, we let them out usually the same time every night, but sometimes our schedules are weird and we're late. And man, if we're late for letting them out into the gardens, they're so loud and are not happy about it. Are Muscovies kind of routine oriented in that same in a similar respect? Or
Yeah, I think so.
okay,
They don't make noise when they're mad because they're
yeah,
very quiet, but they will like pace up and down and try to
okay,
climb up the walls if they can,
got it. So they're
if they want
irritated, but they
out.
just can't express their irritation in the uh, same vocal way that a mallard can.
Yeah. Although, by the way, they have a crest on their head. They have a small little erectile crest that they can raise. But
Okay.
they don't do it when they're mad. They do it mainly when they're like alerted. If they're
Hmm.
alert, they will raise it. I'm
And
not
that's
sure what its purpose
males
is.
and females have that.
Yeah, the males have a bigger crest, but
Okay, interesting. Makes them look big and tough, I guess is the idea.
I'll have to get a picture of it. It's not something you normally see because I don't think they don't raise it that often.
Well, I think we have fully, at least in my sense here, is that we fully described Muscovy ducks. Are there any other things that you want to let people know about Muscovies?
I think that's about it.
Okay.
But basically they're very, very hardy, very independent. Not great if you want a lot of eggs, but they're good pets. I know people who have them in the house a lot of the time. I don't know if they would a regular Mallard-derived like the diapers for them. I don't know if it would fit in Muscovy.
That's a good question. Yeah. Maybe
But I do
actually,
know people who keep them in the house.
yeah. I know, I would assume they poop just as much as a Mallard-derived duck. I think that's probably universal with all waterfowl is just like constant pooping.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lovely feature of ducks. Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to we do a giveaway every week and or excuse, not every week, excuse me, every episode, and we're going to be giving away this book that my wife and I wrote, and it is The Practical Guide to Keeping Pet and Backyard Ducks and How to Joyously Produce the World's Most Expensive Eggs from the World's Most Adorable Animals. And the winner this week, let's see, is Lorianne Fisher. And so Lorianne will be reaching out to you on that to get you the book. And if you want to sign up for our giveaway for an episode, you can do that at Tyrant Farms. Just go to the Duck Keepers Corner page, and there's a sign up form. And that also will notify you of any new episodes as they come out. Hannah, I wanted to number one, thank you so much for joining us. But tell
Thank you
us
for
a little
inviting
bit,
me.
yeah. Um, tell us about your website and tell us about your social channels that you want people to connect with you on, or what those are, and kind of. You have a very good website, by the way. So well done.
Thank you. Yes, it's basically just a guide to raising ducks. It's not very complete, I would say. I still need to write more for it, but I have a variety of basically like I'm trying to write honest, authentic articles from experience and
Mhm.
not all and from research as well, and give people a complete guide to raising ducks there.
Yeah. So it's raising-ducks.com and coming
Yes.
straight from Belize. That's cool. And then is your primary social media channel is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? What do you like to use there?
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah.
All right.
You
And
said
what
you have a link there.
Jungle Side Farm?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good name too. So not many people get to live next to a jungle. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm not sure what episode we'll be doing next. I won't say anything about any kind of a teaser for next. We will have video show notes on our YouTube video here, and also on Duck Keeper's Corner page on our website, and which will also link to Hannah's site and her social media accounts. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Hannah, thanks so much again for telling us all about Muscovy ducks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Duck Keeper's Corner. Please like and share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For show notes, links to references, and other helpful duck resources mentioned in this episode, please see the video description on YouTube or visit tyrantfarms.com. And as always, be sure to quack up by watching or listening to other episodes of the Duck Keeper's Corner.